Well, moves are starting to be made around the league. So let's take a look at them and how they affect the Detroit Tigers all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in. Welcome all. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We are officially back from the holiday break, as many of us had, getting back into the swing of things here. Today, we are going to just kind of look around baseball. You know, we've been very Tigers focused, as we always are, but there are some signings that are starting to happen. Most of them, hilariously, are the Los Angeles Angels. So we will talk about that, and we will discuss everything that they have done, which is comfortably more than everybody else. Obviously, the Dodgers making a big impact already as well. How all of this affects the top free agents, how all of this affects the Detroit Tigers. We'll talk a little bit about Tigers minor league players of the year, which were handed out. And then we will finally discuss MVP voting, which is really going to let a lot of people down. I don't have a hot take. I don't have like a crazy opinion on it. I literally just want to bring it up because we haven't yet. So let's talk about the free agents that have signed. We're literally just going to walk around the league, metaphorically, I guess, and start talking about some of these signings that have occurred. The Angels, like I mentioned there in the open, have been very busy. Travis d'Arnaud, 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Angels. They've also been pretty active in the starting pitching market. They signed Kevin Newman to a 1-year deal over at shortstop. And then, obviously, like I said, starting pitching, they signed Kikuchi to a 3-year deal. Kikuchi was a very big talking point for Tigers fans this past season, not necessarily because of anything he did. Well, not really anything he did, I guess that's fair to say. It was mostly because of the trade. The trade that he was involved in at the deadline. A lot of Tigers fans used that trade as the benchmark for what we should be receiving for Jack Flaherty. And that was a huge talking point at the deadline when it happened. And now Kikuchi is off to LA to play for the Angels for the next 3 years. I actually don't hate that deal for the Angels. I think that the Angels are doing as best as they can. Like, I don't really know how else to word it. I genuinely think the Angels are in a position where they kind of have to jump the gun early, right? Like, all these other teams are kind of waiting. There haven't really been too many other signings so far in the offseason. And I feel like the Angels kind of have no choice but to go out and get all the guys they want early, because once the ball kind of starts rolling a little bit, they're probably not going to win too many free agent battles. So they got to go out and overpay a little bit early, meet demands of players if they want to bring in free agents. They've brought in a solid group. Like I said, I mean, Kikuchi, Newman, Travis d'Arnaud, are those world beaters? No. Is that going to make the Angels a playoff caliber team overnight? No. But you get a healthy Mike Trout, which we've been saying for about 5 years now, and I understand that that's probably that ship has sailed. I'm getting a full 162 out of him at this point, but you do that, you shed some of the weight, you non-tender some players. I don't think the Angels are in for like an 100+ loss season. I think that they might be, okay, we're not making the playoffs or anything, but maybe we're in the mid 70s in win total, and they can continue trying to add to their prospect pool. hopefully have some lottery luck this year. I don't really dislike what the Angels have been doing so far, albeit it is weird to see a bunch of free agents and really the only free agents. I mean, there's a couple more we'll talk about here, but the most the most action and the most active team so far this winter has been a completely irrelevant team in 2024 that was not very good whatsoever and wasn't really on too many people's minds. That's always kind of an interesting situation. Austin Hedges back to Cleveland. Been there for a little bit now. They love him there. Really good defensive catcher. Not a bad player to have on the bench backing up at the catcher position. Naylor obviously taking, making his debut and taking, I would say, a step forward. There's still some big questions about Naylor offensively, but defensively, he's really solid, very similar to Hedges. They clearly are valuing defense at the catcher position over offense. Jacob Stallings to Colorado, I think, is fascinating because it was not too long ago, like within the last 3 years, that Jacob Stallings was viewed as a premier catcher that really like splashed onto the scene and nobody really knew about a ton. And he was a late bloomer. Like he's 35 years old this year. And that's not to say that he didn't have productive years before that, but he really, the Gold Glove year and whatnot, like he really took a big step forward a few years back. And obviously him going back to Colorado, I think that'll help the offensive numbers a little bit. He's a good defender, and maybe Colorado can flip him and get something at the deadline here in 2025. The first base market has been very slow. I don't think there's been a single first baseman signed yet, so we'll wait and see on that. Probably waiting for the big dogs there to sign to kind of set value. Kyle Farmer, 1-year deal to the Colorado Rockies as well. Farmer's another guy that, a few years ago was, I don't think he was ever super highly regarded, but was viewed as in a little bit of a better light with the Dodgers. And now is kind of just like this super utility type of player that's bounced around. Maybe, Colorado again, trying to see if they can get a decent season out of him again and flip him at the deadline. We already talked shortstop market, Kevin Newman with the Angels. That's really the only noise there. And in third base, left field, we have, by the way, I'm using a great resource. MLB.com literally comes out with an article every year that's just every single free agent at the major league level by position. And then as signings happen, they update the article with, signed X year deal with, and then fill in the blank team. Very good resource. I've been using it on this show for, 4 years now. Austin Slater signing with the White Sox, shouldn't have been a big deal. Like that's a bad team making between the margins, wishing Slater the best of luck type of deal. But it came out during that whole saga that the White Sox apparently told Austin Slater that he was their number one target in the offseason. I don't know how White Sox fans are going to make it. Like this is genuinely, if they weren't already laughable, which they were, they just had the most losses in a single season ever. It is that has to be so disheartening. Like this is a team. Remember, okay, this is AL Central lore here. This is a team that we as Tigers fans had to hear about. They're going to take over the division. They're going to be at the top of the AL Central for years and years and years. Like it was like, wait until that prospect pool from the sell-off in what was that, 2016 or 17, wait until that prospect pool really makes it to the majors. They're going to be at the top. And then like Tim Anderson and Moncada and like these guys debuted, Eloy Jimenez, these guys debuted and they had 2 good years. And one of those was a shortened COVID season. And they did nothing with that, but they were still really young. Giolito bounced back, right? Like they were still really, really young, and people assumed that they were going to be at the top of the division for a while, and it just completely fell apart. And in that era, they were in the mix for Bryce Harper. They were in the mix for Manny Machado. Like they were willing to offer $300 million deals to top-end players. They were finalists for those guys. And now Austin Slater is their biggest target of an offseason. I sympathize, empathize, whichever the right one is. That sucks. But not going to feel sorry for them. Really going to take advantage of them being at the bottom of the AL Central for yet another year. Let's finish up outfield, which there's not too many others of, and then get into the starting pitching market, which I think probably has the biggest effect on your Detroit Tigers, at least this early in the offseason. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks uses curation to make it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. All-in pricing is a great feature. You can toggle it and get your entire total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout anymore when you use Game Time. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow, of course, as we continue our off-season conversations here, trying to get some cool stuff ironed out over the next few weeks. Obviously, we have winter meetings approaching, so a lot of our conversation will kind of shift and focus on that as we get closer and closer. But there's been some other media reports as well, front office rankings. We'll talk about that here pretty soon. Some other individual players, any rumors we hear, you name it. We will be here every day for the next couple of weeks, then down to 3 a week still throughout kind of the dead part of the offseason at the end of the year. Also, before we get to starting pitchers, Tommy Edman signing with the Dodgers. We can kind of group that in with Blake Snell signing a 5-year deal with the Dodgers. Not that they're the same caliber of player, but just that the Dodgers are already making moves as well. We talked, it's actually funny, the episode where we discussed Blake Snell and his market and whatnot was the day that Blake Snell signed with the Dodgers. So that soured pretty quickly and was no longer relevant conversation, no longer a relevant talking point pretty quickly there. But, when it comes to the Dodgers, don't let them get Juan Soto, man. Just don't. Do anything in your power. And I'm not talking to the Tigers specifically. I don't think the Tigers are even going to call on Juan Soto, which is sad and a little demoralizing because it didn't used to be that way. But I don't really expect the Tigers to again, even really kick the tires. He's going to get, $400 million, $500 million. Like, I don't think the Tigers are going to do anything like that, at least right now. Hopefully, maybe someday that changes again. But, just please everybody else involved. I don't root for people to sign with the Yankees, but the Dodgers are very quickly becoming what the Yankees used to be and becoming what the Yankees did to become so hated, right? The Yankees became super hated because they won all the time and they spent more money than everybody else and created these incredible teams loaded with rosters, incredible rosters loaded with players. And everybody hated that, right? Because they felt like a player would become a free agent. They just would all become New York Yankees. This generation, the generation of kids now, they view the Dodgers the way that the older generation views the Yankees, because that is what the Dodgers have become. They get everybody they want, they get. And they won this past season. So it's no longer, it's the Dodgers that keep trying and failing. No, they just won a ring. And if you include 2020, then like they've won a couple over the last 5 years. But I don't think whatever. Doesn't matter now whether you legitimize 2020 or not. They just won the World Series. So it is just please don't let them get Juan Soto. Good for Blake Snell. I love when players get paid. I'm always in favor of that. But that rotation is nuts. You understand that what the Dodgers rotation is now? It's basically like 5 aces. It's Ohtani is going to be healthy and pitching again. Now it's Blake Snell. Yamamoto's still there. Like it is Glass now. Like it's asinine. And they have depth too. Like they have guys that in the wing that would be mid or high end rotation starters anywhere else and are going to either be in the bullpen or just not in the rotation to start off the on opening day. Slightly terrifying. Corbin Burnes has not signed yet. He's going to have a big bidding war. He is pretty comfortably, I'd say, the best starting pitcher on the market now, especially after Snell signed, arguably already before Snell signed. We talked about Nick Martinez when it happened, him accepting the qualifying offer from the Reds. Kyle Hendricks also to the Angels. Frankie Montas to the Mets. Now, that one's interesting because it was for $17 million AAV. And we'll talk about an old friend here in a second in Matthew Boyd, the sign with the Cubs for $14.5 million AAV. Why am I bringing this up? Why does this matter? Because this is determining the starting pitching market. And if that is the starting pitching market for Frankie Montas and Matthew Boyd, do the math in your head on what the starting pitching market is going to be for a guy of Tarek Skubal's caliber. Extending him, I think it would be a massive mistake to let him walk. I think extending him should be a very high priority for this baseball team. The longer you wait, the more expensive he is going to be. That is how this works. You extend somebody, everybody cries about how it's an overpay, and then assuming they're still good in a few years, it becomes the correct value. So it happens in salary cap sports. It happens in non-salary cap sports. That's just kind of how contracts in sports for players work. Now, then you have the Javi situation, right? Anthony Rendon, you name it, Chris Bryant, whatever, where you have players that just fall off a cliff production-wise. Those are obviously, that's sunk money, and that's not where you want to be at as an organization. You don't want to be investing in a player that's not providing wins or any production to your team. But if he stays at the level he's at, then you got to extend him sooner rather than later because that number's only going to get higher. Every winter, they're just going to get more and more expensive. So here we are. Let's talk about Matthew Boyd and him signing with the Chicago Cubs. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to you all today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in. As always, Matthew Boyd signs a 2-year deal with the Chicago Cubs, $14.5 million a season, so $29 million in total. Good for Matthew Boyd. I don't have too much else to say here. Just really happy for him. He is one of the best players to ever wear a Tigers uniform, to ever play the game of Major League Baseball. It is just fantastic to see him get rewarded. You know, he has been on the wrong side of injuries rather often in his career. He had a big injury while he was here. He had a big injury when they first non-tendered him. He had a big injury last season, right? Like he has really continued to just come out on the other side and be productive. He was good for Cleveland this past year, which is why he's getting rewarded with this 14.5 AAV contract. As far as the Cubs go, I don't really know what to think of what the Cubs are doing. Like I've just been kind of confused about the Cubs' direction for a little while now. I feel like they remind me of what the Red Wings were at the end of the playoff streak, where it was just like, okay, like this team is clearly not one of the best teams in the league and is clearly not going to make like a deep playoff run, but they're also far too talented still to be like at the bottom. They're kind of just in that like purgatory no man's land of being one of the better teams to miss the postseason. That's a spot that I always want to avoid in sports, no matter what. Like you just it's a lose-lose. You have to either get over the hump or go back down and rebuild 2.0 type of thing. So we'll see what the Cubs do. There's Bellinger trade rumors. I am not interested in all in Cody Bellinger. I've been asked that a few times this offseason about if the Tigers should not kick the tires, knock the door on that. No. I understand like he can play first base. His value is best in the outfield. He's a lefty. We don't need any more lefty outfielders. And on top of that, he has been just unbelievably inconsistent in his career offensively. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's been an MVP caliber player at points in his career and then like a 600 OPS guy at some points. And it's just his swing and his mechanics are so, that's such a long loopy swing that it just makes it very hard for him to put up consistent seasons year to year. So I have no interest in Bellinger, especially for what he's getting paid. But I don't think that the Cubs are like screwed because they're holding on to him. He's still a good player. So that's pretty much it for looking around the league, talking about the players that have signed already. Some other news and notes: Kevin McGonigal and Jaden Ham are the Tigers minor league players of the year. McGonigal hitter, Ham pitcher. We talked about Ham a little bit yesterday and talking about the potential of trading him. Obviously love the player and am very excited for his season. This is a guy that was not on really anybody's radar coming out of the draft or at the end of 2023 and just exploded onto the scene. And if he has a decent year this year, he's a college. He attended college. Like, if he has a good year this year, this is a guy that could end the season in like AAA this season. Like, he could really fly through at his age and given what he's done already. So I hope that we can get some reps in AA for him this season, but just such a fun, exciting, and awesome year for him. And then Kevin McGonigal is probably the best hitting prospect in the organization. And I mean pure hitting. Max Clark is the best all-around player prospect in the organization. He can hit, he can field, he's really fast, he's got a cannon, right? You're hoping for 4 or 5 tools out of him. McGonigal is never going to be super, super great with the glove. He's not an elite speed guy. Again, there's some questions defensively about where he ends up, but that dude can rake, and he had a phenomenal season when he was healthy. I'm very excited about the future of Kevin McGonigal in the Old English D. So congratulations to those two guys. Let's talk about MVP voting, shall we? I really don't have too much to say. I literally just wanted to go over it because we haven't yet. American League, Aaron Judge wins unanimously, and Bobby Witt Jr. unanimously gets second. All 30 votes for second place. Both of those very deserved. I think Judge pretty comfortably deserved the MVP, and I think Bobby Witt Jr. pretty comfortably was the second best player in the American League as well. Juan Soto getting 21 of the 30 third place votes. So the Yankees this past season had 2 of the top 3 finalists for American League MVP. And of course, Bobby Witt Jr. being the American League Central is terrifying. He is so young and under contract for so long with the Royals. I just like that really does instill fear into me. Like I think of the Royals and it's like, okay, well, are they going to be as good as they were last year? Are they going to be able to build on that? What's the starting pitching going to look like long term? Like I have some questions about how they're built, but one thing it doesn't matter to me how they're built is that Bobby Witt Jr. can beat us any given day. That is a player that by himself can win baseball games anytime he steps on the field. Not every time, but anytime. And that's terrifying. Gunnar Henderson, phenomenal season, was probably the MVP of the first half of the year. Jose Ramirez, another inter-division player there, gets 6th place. Vlad Guerrero Jr. gets 7th. Interesting offseason for him. I'm not really sure what the Blue Jays are thinking. I have a hard time believing they're going to completely blow it up this year. I think that might be like a trade deadline 2025 type of conversation, but who knows? There are some people out there that really think the Blue Jays are just going to kind of throw in the towel and give up on this era of Blue Jays baseball and kind of go back into a rebuild. You have Tarek Skubal, who finishes in the top 10 in MVP voting. He did receive a 4th place vote, but received 9 6th place votes and 7 7th place votes. So he finds himself at the end of the top 10 there. Jaron Duran had a phenomenal season for the Red Sox. He gets some love there. Jordan, Brent Rooker, phenomenal follow on social media as well. Manuel Clase, phenomenal season for the Guardians, obviously. Cal Raleigh, man, what a year for him. Rafi Devers, Anthony Santander, somebody that Tigers fans want the team to look into bringing in. Jose Altuve, Seth Lugo, Corey Seager, Framber Valdez, and Tyler freaking Holton, baby. I know we talked about it on Thanksgiving, but golly, just so awesome to go, literally just to go to his baseball reference page and just see MVP 15, right? Like just see like, oh my God, like that's real. Like, oh my gosh, he's literally, he got an MVP vote this year. Like that is just so unbelievably cool. A 10th place vote. Obviously. Then in the National League, you have Ohtani winning it unanimously. Lindor not getting 2nd place unanimously, but does finish as the runner-up. Ketel Marte in 3rd, Marcelo Zuna 4th, William Contreras 5th, Bryce Harper 6th. Chris Sale getting some love. Unbelievable season over there. Ellie De La Cruz, Jackson Merrill, Willie Adames, Matt Chapman, Zach Wheeler, Mookie Betts, Jurickson Profar, man, what a career he has had. I feel like I say this every 6 months about Jurickson Profar, but like someone should make a movie about his baseball career. It is fascinating to me. Like it's just top prospect in baseball, was like the biggest prospect of my lifetime when he debuted. And then it was like he really struggled, was almost out of baseball, got a second chance, came back, was a solid starter, then really struggled again, and then is like an all-star with MVP votes. Just absolutely nuts. Manny Machado, Kyle Schwarber, Freddie Freeman, who obviously had a very inspiring postseason, Luis Arraez, which is wild to me, Paul Skeens, Teoscar Hernandez, another Tigers potential suitor there. Ezekiel Tovar, who had a great season for the Rockies. Cool to see him get some love. Jackson Churio and Dylan Cease for the Padres. Like Ohtani deserved it. I think he deserved it unanimously. I think Lindor deserved runner-up unanimously. I think he should have, similar to Bobby Witt Jr., all 32nd place votes there. But Ketel Marte did have a really good season as well. I just think Lindor is one of the more underrated superstars in the league. Like he's so good defensively at a premier position in shortstop and hit well this year to really kind of catapult himself into that conversation. Somebody that was set to be a free agent at the same time as Javi Baez. So that's fun. Ohtani is obviously one of the most talented, if not the most talented player of all time. You know, the interesting thing about that is going to be when he pitches this upcoming season. The dude just won MVP as a DH, dog. You know how crazy that is? Especially in today's era. Like it's one thing to do that in any era, right? Like that's just crazy. Like you have to hit well enough to be the most valuable player because you're not providing literally anything else besides your bat. But in this era where people are so analytically driven and are so, you know, what is your overall value and what is your WAR and all that, like all of these stats that heavily factor in defense and base running and whatnot, for him to be a DH, steal, you know, almost more bases than anybody, and to not play a lick of defense and be the unanimous MVP in the National League is just remarkable. He is a special talent, and we all know it. And don't let Juan Soto be a Dodger. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow. Talk a little bit more Tiger stuff. I know today was a little bit more broader of a picture, just kind of a look around baseball, but I think it's important to do that still and talk about how that relates to your Tigers as well. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.